My feeling, Charlie, is that it's not that pseudoscience and superstition and New Age so-called beliefs and fundamentalist zealotry are something new. They've been with us for as long as we've been human. But we live in an age based on science and technology with formidable technological powers.
But I mean, you blast them all. Creationists, Christian scientists who you say would rather allow their children to suffer than give them insulin or antibiotics. Astrologers come in for particular scorn on your part.
Well, I would say scorn, just derision.
Derision. A more generous version of scorn. But what's the danger of all this? I mean, you know, this is not the thing that...
There's two kinds of dangers. One is what I just talked about, that we've arranged a society based on science and technology, in which nobody understands anything about science and technology. And this combustible mixture of ignorance and power, sooner or later, is going to blow up in our faces. I mean, who is running the science and technology in a democracy if the people don't know anything about it? And the second reason that I'm worried about this is that science is more than a body of knowledge. It's a way of thinking, a way of skeptically interrogating the universe with a fine understanding of human fallibility. If we are not able to ask skeptical questions, to interrogate those who tell us that something is true, to be skeptical of those in authority, then we're up for grabs for the next charlatan, political or religious, who comes ambling along. It's a thing that Jefferson lay great stress on. It wasn't enough, he said, to enshrine some rights in a constitution or a Bill of Rights. The people had to be educated, and they had to practice their skepticism and their education. Otherwise, we don't run the government. The government runs us.
Jefferson was amazing in his devotion to science. We think of Jefferson as this man who was literate and who was a passionate articulator of freedom. But if you go to Monticello, what you appreciate is he was at heart a scientist, a botanist, an architect,
geologist.
And if you Meriwether Lewis, as we know from Stephen Ambrose, you know, he wanted him to go out and do experimentations and explore and be skeptical and find answers to passages and explore the West.
Exactly right. And there was also an economic grail there if the Northwest Passage was found. Jefferson said that he was at heart a scientist, that he would have loved to have been a scientist. But there were certain events happening in America that called to him, and so he devoted his life to that kind of politics. Indeed. So that generations later, people could be scientists.
It is this notion that science is not of great interest to us in some sense, that somehow we don't want to learn.
You see, people read the stock market quotations and financial pages. Look how complex that is.
And because they know the direct connection to their own...
There's a motivation, but they're capable. Large numbers of people. People are able to look at sports statistics. Look how many people can do that. Understanding science is not more difficult than that. It doesn't involve greater intellectual activities. But the thing about science is, first of all, it's after the way the universe really is, and not what makes us feel good. And a lot of the competing doctrines are after what feels good, and not what's true.
Okay. Now, Stephen Hawking is engaged in a search for the ultimate answer, a grand unified theory that would explain everything. Stephen Hawking, that is quite an agenda. How are you getting on with it?
In the last 300 years, we have discovered the laws that govern the universe in all but the most extreme conditions. I think there is a reasonable chance that we may find a complete set of laws by the end of the century if we don't blow ourselves up first. If we do find a complete unified theory, it will be a great triumph, not just for scientists, but for ordinary people as well. In time, the unified theory would be simplified and taught in schools, at least in outline. Then, everyone would have some idea of how the universe works.
Well, that is a tremendous vision. Now, Carl Sagan, you wrote an introduction to the book, and one of the striking things that you said is that it's only children nowadays who ask the big questions because they don't know enough not to.
What I was trying to get across was the notion that the school systems, it seems to me, have a attitude of discouragement of asking fundamental questions. If a 5 or 6 year old asks why the moon is round or why grass is green, the usual adult answer, at least in my experience, is to discourage the child. Say, what shape did you expect the moon to be? Square? Or what color did you expect the grass to be? Blue? Instead of saying that those are interesting questions, let's try to find out the answer, or maybe nobody knows the answer, and when you grow up you'll be able to discover the answer. It would be very healthy for the human species if there were less discouragement and more scientists.
How did the universe start? With a Big Bang?
We observe that distant galaxies are moving away from us. This means that they must have been closer together in the past. In fact, one can show that all the galaxies must have been on top of each other about 15 billion years ago. This was a real Big Bang, not a puny thing that took place on the stock exchange a couple of years ago. It was the beginning of the universe and of time itself. Anything that happened before the Big Bang could not affect what happened after. So we can neglect events before the Big Bang and say that time began at the Big Bang. After the Big Bang, we believe that the universe expanded in a very rapid, inflationary manner. Again, this inflation in the universe quite puts modern economic inflation in the shade. An increase of billions of percent in a tiny fraction of a second. Of course, that was before the present government. During the inflationary period, the universe borrowed heavily from its gravitational energy to finance the creation of more matter. The result was a triumph for the economics of Keynes. A vigorous and expanding universe filled with material objects. The debt of gravitational energy will not have to be repaid until the end of the universe.
Well, I'd like to stay with this basic proposition for the time being, the Big Bang theory. And to come to you, Carl Sagan, could you help me by putting into layman's terms what was involved with this Big Bang?
Well, here we are on a planet which is about 5,000 million years old. The sun around which it goes is not much older. It is part of a galaxy which is perhaps 10 or 12,000 million years old, which is one of perhaps hundreds of thousands of millions of other galaxies. And none of this, planets, suns, galaxies, was around at the time of the Big Bang. At the time of the Big Bang, there was energy, elementary particles, which slowly evolved into the kind of universe we know today. We are the product of a grand evolutionary sequence, cosmic evolution, about which we are only occasionally aware. One of the great accomplishments of Dr. Hawking is to plug us better in to the knowledge of this long evolutionary sequence.
Well, what I have in my mind is a picture that Carl Sagan had been leading me towards of the whole universe in quite amazingly small packages, like putting the whole world into a matchbox, as it were, immensely dense and immensely tiny, and in fact so tiny it's kind of disappearing into a little point Is this the earliest imaginable point that our minds are taking us to so far, Carl Sagan?
Well, as Dr. Hawking said, the galaxies are expanding, running away from each other. The further away they are from each other, the faster they are running away. If you run the cosmic movie back into time, you come to a moment, perhaps 15,000 million years ago, in which all the matter in the universe was touching in, if you like, a point. And a key unanswered and perhaps unanswerable question is, where did all of that matter energy come from? What was before that? And if it was made from nothing, who made it? And who made the maker? We humans have had civilization only for about 10,000 years. Our species is a few 100,000 years old. Our genus, the genus Homo, is a few million years old. And therefore, for the vast bulk of our tenure on Earth, we were something other than sedentary. And the word has such an aura of self-congratulation, civilized. What were we? We were hunters and foragers. We wandered in small, itinerant, extended families, and our knowledge of the hunter-gatherer lifestyle is due to a few courageous and far-seeing anthropologists who went and lived with the few remaining hunter-gatherer groups before they were finally and utterly destroyed by civilization.
Okay, but you got to make, I'm not sure you'll go this far with me, but I mean, there's a lot of that is about feeling good, and there's a lot of that that's about hocus pocus, but at the same time, there are millions of people who understand science does not prove religion, but because religion is faith-based. And therefore, you should not deny the value of it because it is faith-based and not scientific.
But let's look a little more deeply into that. What is faith? It is belief in the absence of evidence. Now, I don't propose to tell anybody what to believe, but for me, believing when there's no compelling evidence is a mistake. The idea is to withhold belief until there is compelling evidence. And if the universe does not comply with our predispositions, okay, then we have the wrenching obligation to accommodate to the way the universe really is.
So you step forward to say, I deny all religion because I can't see it proved scientifically? No. You see, and the value of religious experience and the value of reaching for higher experiences.
Let me say, religion deals with history, with poetry, with great literature, with ethics, with morals, including the morality of treating compassionately the least fortunate among us. All of these are things that I endorse wholeheartedly. Where religion gets into trouble is in those cases that it pretends to know something about science. The science in the Bible, for example, was acquired by the Jews from the Babylonians during the Babylonian captivity of 600 BC. That was the best science on the planet then. But we've learned something since then. Roman Catholicism, Reformed Judaism, most of the mainstream Protestant denominations have no difficulty with the idea that humans have evolved from other creatures, that the Earth is 4.6 billion years old, with the Big Bang. They don't have any trouble with that. The trouble comes with people who are biblical literalists, who believe that the Bible is dictated by the creator of the universe to an unerring stenographer.
And so therefore they...
And has no metaphor or allegory.
And from there they make their political and economic choices, and social choices.
And scientific.
And scientific choices. And scientific, and that's part of your problem with that idea.
Exactly.
It is that because for the wrong reasons we make the wrong choices about science.
That's right. So who is more humble? The scientist who looks at the universe with an open mind and accepts whatever the universe has to teach us, or somebody who says everything in this book must be considered the literal truth, and never mind the fallibility of all the human beings involved in the writing of this book?